Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
Now it is time to introduce our main speaker for tonight, Mary.
My name is Mary Murphy, and I'm an alcoholic. I'm really happy to be here tonight. I'm happy to be sober. I want to welcome the newcomers. I want to thank the birthday people. There are a lot of things those birthday people said that really touched me tonight, but I think the one that really got me was, what's his name, Vester? Oh God, where's that guy? Okay, Vita, okay. He said, when you're 6 years sober, you can have this. And then he pointed to the cutest bunch of guys that I've ever seen, and I thought, well, when I was 6 years sober, I didn't have that.
God, what a great guy. He was so funny.
But maybe I'd be willing to go back, you know? Just maybe. I also want to thank my friend John. I want to wish him happy birthday, and I want to tell you, if you're new, that you will never imagine the feeling that you have when you are an old-timer and you see the people that you got sober with. There is no feeling like it. I mean, Jerry and Kathleen and Aloma and John. I mean, we were all there at Architects of Adversity. I was once at Architects of Adversity when I was new. First of all, for any newcomer who stood up or raised their hand, that takes such courage. I never, ever wanted to do it. In fact, somebody made me do it at Architects of Adversity, but I'll never forget when I was new. I was afraid to tell my mother that I was in AA. I had no idea what I was going to say to her. She spent all that money sending me to college. They spent all this time. They thought I was so successful as a journalist, and here I was.
Sorry to interrupt your viewing. Taper Dave here. Just wanted to take a second to ask you to like and subscribe to my channel and let me know if you like what you're listening. I've got some very good talks here, and this one's a great one. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Tell me what you think.
A crazy, insane newcomer in AA, and so I shared about it at Architects, and at the Architects I used to go to, there was a guy named Art there who had long fingernails. I'm not kidding you. They were like out to here, and before every meeting, he went in and got toilet paper and got the whole roll and sat there during the meeting and wrote out a manifesto of whatever he was going to do. I mean, he could have been the Unabomber. I have no idea what this guy was doing. And there was a guy named Woody. He's still around, but he never wore a shirt, just kind of overalls, and he was real like macho. And then there was this bag lady there who with about 17 bags, and she was there. So after the meeting, Molly, who was sober a little bit longer than I was, asked me to come outside, and she took a picture of me, Art, Woody, and the bag lady, and she mailed it to me, and she said in the note, "Send this to your mother and tell her these are your new friends." Because if you're new, I want to tell you that the last thing in the world I wanted to be was an alcoholic. I was humiliated. I was embarrassed. I didn't want to tell anybody. I remember at this big book study we used to go to on Gardner, and I remember once just pounding my fist on the table, "I do not want to be an alcoholic," just screaming. And when I was finished, they all applauded, you know. I thought they were going to throw me out. I'm from an alcoholic family. I would just say on one side of the family, there were alcoholics. On the other side were my mother and all her sisters who prayed for the people on my father's side, said the rosary beads, and said, never be a woman alcoholic, never be a woman alcoholic. You know, there is something about being a woman alcoholic. I've thought about this a lot lately. I was in Ireland last year speaking at a meeting, and a couple of women, newcomers, came up and talked to me about how terrified they were to come into Alcoholics Anonymous, how really embarrassed, I mean, much more than I was. I mean, really, they had to like kind of put the coat over their head and sneak into the meeting. And one of the guys in Ireland said to me, oh, you know, it's better for a woman in Ireland to have killed her husband than to ever say she has a drinking problem. And I thought about that, and I've been thinking about it a lot ever since, because really sometimes I go to AA meetings, and, you know, you listen to the guys, they get up, they tell their funny stories about, I got drunk, I picked up this woman, I woke up with her, she was a moose. They always say something horrible about the woman. You know, it's never like she was so beautiful, I shouldn't be with her. No, it's always like she was a moose. But anyway, that's not the truth. We know that. But the truth is, women alcoholics, when they get up and they're going to tell those stories, there is still a sense of humiliation and shame. We don't feel the same way guys do about our drinking. At least that is my humble opinion. Anyway, I grew up in this family, and my mother's one of 15, my father's one of 11, and we grew up in the same parish. If you're not Catholic, you'll have no idea what that meant, but basically we all went to the same church. Everybody lived literally next door, down the street, around the corner, up the street. There was no place between my house and Holy Rosary Grade School where some member of my family didn't live, on some street, on some corner. When I came into Alcoholics Anonymous, because my family was blue-collar Irish Catholic, I was so humiliated by this family until I was sober a pretty long time, when it suddenly dawned on me, and I'll tell you how later, that I was in a completely safe, loving environment, protected everywhere. Anyway, we used to have these parties. We always had these parties at our house. This is the essence of my childhood. Every Sunday we had a party. We always had them at our house. Everybody came. So there were like 100 people in our house. And as I said, my mother and her sisters were upstairs praying for the people who were downstairs, which was my father, who was behind the bar. He was a singing bartender. He had a beautiful voice. Everybody was singing or dancing or laughing or having a good time. My Uncle Joe, who just died this year, had a box he carried with him all the time, filled with the letters from my dead grandmother. And whenever he got really drunk, which was every day, I never saw the guy, never sober. He was 82 and still a school crossing guard, a drunken school crossing guard in St. Louis. Many, many, many children are almost dead because of him. And is this pure, or did Jeff drink out of it? No, I'm going to drink some. It's all right. I have a baby who won't touch anything that isn't purified. This is how I purify. Anyway, so my Uncle Joe would get the letters from the dead grandmother, and they would read them, and they would just weep. I mean, sob beyond control. And then, of course, they would burst into song, because that's what the Irish do. They would sing this song, "My mother's pearls are her boys and girls, no greater treasure has she." And then they'd cry, and then that was it. My Aunt Loretta never said a word, ever. I never had a conversation with this woman in my whole life, but every party she would take this little plastic bag out of her purse, and in it were taps. She'd put the taps on her shoes. She'd put the shoes on. She'd wildly tap dance around the party and just faint and pass out. And that was it. I mean, that was Aunt Loretta. Hello. I also had a cousin named Rita. And Rita was exactly my age. And, but she took a different path than I did, at least earlier. I took the same path later. And one night, Rita got married when she was really young, and she was home one night with two of her kids. One of them was at her mother's house. And she got really drunk. This was in high school. She got really drunk. She was smoking. And the next thing I knew, the phone was ringing in our house in the middle of the night, and Rita had burned both of her babies to death in this fire. And I I just remember this. I remember the night. I remember my father, no matter whether he drank, no matter what he did, he was the go-to guy in our family. If there was any problem with anybody, you called Pat, because Pat could take care of it. And I remember the funeral, and I remember the crying, and then I remember this, and this is the lesson I came into Alcoholics Anonymous with. Never, ever speak about anything that causes you that much pain, and never air your dirty laundry in public. Never. I mean, the Irish, they didn't even talk. Brother and sister didn't even talk to each other about the problems. Anyway, I went to high school. I went to a really good high school. I was a cheerleader. It's not popular now. It was incredibly popular then. I was on the student council, and I was an A student. And I had my first drink. I should have had my first drink when I was about 7, but I didn't. And the reason I say that is because no matter what I achieved, even in high school, I didn't feel like that way. I felt inferior, I felt insecure, I felt poor, I felt unattractive, and I felt like, who said it? 26 years, Frank. Why did I forget that name? I was married to a guy named Frank for 20 years. How could I have forgotten that name? Anyway, Frank said it, about there's just something about how you feel inside that you don't, at least I didn't act that way outside. I mean, I never showed people how insecure I really felt, but that's how I felt. And I had my first drink at my senior prom. And I had my first drink because I had a resentment. And I had a resentment toward the nuns. And the nuns didn't like my dress. They said it was too low. And they pulled me aside and they tied netting, sewed netting all across my chest here so that, it looked like some freak, design. And so that everything was covered up so I would look, pure. And I want you to know that I sponsor a nun today. And everything I ever wanted to do to those nuns, I've done to her. Revenge is sweet when it's cold, don't they say? No, I'm very nice to her, but trust me, I've been tougher sometimes than I should have been. Anyway, I was humiliated, and so one of the guys said, "Why don't you come out to the back of the gym and have a bourbon and Coke?" That was a really big drink in St. Louis. So I had a bourbon and Coke behind the gym. I'd never had a drink. I mean, everybody around me was drinking, but I never had a drink. And I had this bourbon and Coke, and then I had another bourbon and Coke, and then I had another bourbon and Coke, and then I was doing cartwheels in front of the nuns. I just remember that. I was always getting in trouble with nuns. This is truly, my maiden name is Bagley. They were always going, Mary Bagley, Mary Bagley. We used to play these jokes on the nuns. Like one nun was hard of hearing. So you'd stand up, she'd ask a question and you'd stand up and then, you'd give the answer and you just go like this. So no words came out and she'd be going, what, I mean, we're just crazy. My role in life was defiance, really. I didn't know that until I came into AA. I had no idea I was as defiant as I really was before I came here. And then, of course, I met a whole other group of, everybody in here is defiant. So I had my first drink, and then I went to college in New York, and the drinking age was 18, and I got drunk on my very first weekend in New York when I turned 18, and I came back drunk out of my mind, and the nun was there, and she was standing at the top of the steps in the dorm, and I was campused, and the next week we voted for class president, and everybody knew my name because I was campused, and I was voted president of my class. And that one thing, and all the things like it that came after it, were the very things that kept me from ever thinking that I might have a problem with alcohol or drugs. In college, the nuns gave us these little pills. If you had stomach pains, they gave you little pills. They'd say, would you like the pink ones, dear, or the yellow ones? The yellow ones, I would always say the yellow ones because they would keep you up for like 5 weeks at a time, which is what I really liked. That's the only way I knew how to study. I didn't know how to study on the natch. Once I got to college, I had no idea how to study on the natch because the way I studied was with Dexedrine, those little yellow pills. The way I came into Alcoholics Anonymous was on Dexedrine. The thing I didn't know before I came into Alcoholics Anonymous was that you can't take pills and be sober. I had no idea. If I had known that, I would have never walked in the doors of Alcoholics Anonymous. I remember at my very first meeting, I came in, my first meeting, and two women asked me to have coffee with them afterward. And we went out for coffee, and they said, when did you have your last drink? And it had actually been about a month before that. And I told them that, and they said, would you do anything else? And I said, well, what do you mean by anything else? And they said, well, do you take any pills? And I said, well, yeah, I take tranquilizers for my bleeding ulcer, and I have pain pills for my back, but every pill I take is prescribed by doctors. I remember saying that, at which point everybody laughed and said, we don't drink and we don't take pills in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'll tell you, it was the scariest thing I'd ever heard in my life. The scariest thing I had ever heard in my life was that I had to lead life on the natch. That I couldn't get up in the morning and put something in my mouth to make me get through the day, and then put something in my mouth to take care of my back pain, and put something in my mouth to take care of my ulcers, and then go to the bar after work and get drunk out of my mind. I mean, I had no idea that I could even function without all that. I graduated from college. I have no idea how I graduated from college. I got kicked out once, but I wrote a letter, which I should have known was the beginning of my writing career, but I didn't. And I got back into to this college, and I graduated. And then I went home to St. Louis, and I got a job. I wanted to get a job in government because I was a political science major, but I only typed 17 words a minute. So just in case you're trying to get a job, I couldn't get a bad job. This is the truth. I literally could not get a bad job. No one would hire me. So I got a job at a newspaper in my hometown. And the way I got it is I met with the guy for an hour, and he said, I want to hire you as a cub reporter. And I said, well, gee, that sounds great, but I want you to know something. I can't type. And he said, I don't care if you can type, you can think. It was my very first job. It was the thing I fell absolutely in love with. It's a thing I am still in love with today. Thank you, God. Thank you, God. Thank you, God, that my alcoholism didn't destroy this thing that I love so much. But it was also a job where, hey, everybody drank. That was the greatest thing about being a reporter. Every single person drank. We had a bar across the street called The Typo. The printers went there. The reporters went there. Every night there was a fist fight. This was so much better than Marymount College, where I had to show up at 10 by my bed, where the nuns came in and we dipped our fingers in the holy water and blessed ourselves and said, good night, Sister Mary. I mean, I was out on the town. There were boys there. It was so exciting. I just absolutely loved it. My parents didn't like it that much, though, because I started to do bizarre things when I was drinking. For instance, one night I came home and I missed the driveway and I hit the house, which was not a good idea. I have a daughter who's 21 now. Oh, God. Now I know what my mother went through. Really, you don't know what your mothers go through until you're a mother. And she came home the other night. She called me at 2 a.m. Hello, Megan? Mom, I'm coming home with some friends. And suddenly there were all these people in my house. And the next day I said to her, why did you call me at 2 a.m? And she said, oh, Mom, I'm sorry. We were all drinking. I didn't realize it was 2, and I thought, yeah, that's exactly what I used to be like. Oh, Mom, I'm sorry. I didn't realize it. Oh, I didn't mean for you to worry all night long, Mom. I mean, all these things that we don't think about when we're new, all these things you don't think about what you did to the people around you. Anyway, I couldn't take it anymore. I mean, I just couldn't take living at home. It was just driving me crazy, and they were on me all the time, and people were watching me, and so I met a guy who lived in California, and I knew him about 2 weeks. He asked me to marry him. I said, yes, of course. And I came to California. And I got a job at another newspaper downtown in Los Angeles, and I found another bar called the Redwood. And I started going to the Redwood every single night after work. It's so funny, when I was about 10 years sober, I went to the Redwood for lunch one day with my sponsor, and the waitress came up, and she said, she hadn't seen me in a decade. She came up and she said, "Mary, the usual?" I couldn't believe it. I remember my favorite dinner of all times when I was drinking. Pretzels. I love those pretzels. Peanuts. And those little drumsticks that they have at the bar. Do you wonder why I had a bleeding ulcer? No. This is exactly why I had a bleeding ulcer. I had donuts and Diet Dr. Pepper for breakfast, peanuts, pretzels, and little drumsticks for dinner. My father, who I never talk about ever, he died at 59 of a heart attack. He died because he drank too much. He died because he smoked too much. He died because he didn't take care of himself. And he was the sweetest man I'd ever known. When he drank, he didn't hit me. When he drank, he sang to me. When he drank, he wasn't mean. When he drank, he went into the bedroom and closed the door and turned out the lights and listened to the radio. When he drank and we were at a party, he danced with me. And we never mentioned that my father was an alcoholic. We still haven't. No one still has mentioned the fact that he was an alcoholic. But I know because I carry the gene. I got it. I got the very thing that my mother told me that if I got as a woman, I would destroy my family. I got it. I didn't want to have it. I didn't know I had it till I walked in the doors of Alcoholics Anonymous, but I got it. The way I got here was this. The first person that ever mentioned to me AA was I was at a Hollywood party one night, right up Coldwater Canyon, and it was a really beautiful, star-studded. Even the waiter was in tails. He had a silver tray with the drinks, and he was bringing the drinks around. And he said to this woman standing next to me, "Would you like a drink?" And she said, "No, thank you. I'm an alcoholic." And I thought, now this woman is really sick. She has just told a waiter at a Hollywood black tie party that she's an alcoholic. And I, about 2 hours later, jumped into the pool at this party with or without my clothes. I can't remember whether I did or I didn't. But I'll tell you one thing, I didn't forget what that woman said. I didn't talk to her for 6 years after that. But she was one of the first phone calls I made when I decided that I really needed help. And then the second way I really found out about was AA was as I said, I have a really bad back. I took a lot of pain pills for it. I was in and out of the hospital a lot. And I finally went to a place in Beverly Hills where you kind of worked out Pilates, one of the first Pilates places. And the guy there told absolutely every person in the place that he was a sober member of AA. This is 29 years ago. No one was telling people that they were sober members of AA. Today, of course, if you're a celebrity and you're sober 2 days, you're on the cover of People magazine and you're telling the whole world. But not then. We weren't doing it then. We weren't setting up websites for sobriety for people who are a week or two sober. We weren't doing that. Nobody was talking about it. There was still a kind of black mark. Sometimes I think we forget. I think we, honest to God, forget how difficult it is for you to walk in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. We think that because it's so accepted in society, I'm telling you, it is not. Recently, I went on a 12-step call. A woman called. I went down to pick her up in Watts. I was so scared, I can't even tell you. And this was not so long ago. I mean, it was so long ago because Constance was with me. Constance Freiberg, and she's so much more nervous than I ever will be. And we were there, and she was like, are we going to be murdered? And I kept saying, no, we're not going to be murdered because no one on a 12-step call ever gets murdered. I don't know where I thought that, No one on a 12-step call ever gets hurt. I mean, you're just invincible. You just go right into the heart of Watts, and they just part the seas, Oh, well, here are these two girls from AA. Anyway, we went to the door, and we knocked on the door, and 10 guys came to the door. We were shaking. And I said, is Sue here? And the guy goes, no. And she don't want to be here. And I looked in through the bedroom and in through the living room and into the bedroom, and underneath the bed, there were these two little eyes right there underneath the bed. And that was the moment I understood what a long walk it is in here. What an incredibly long walk it is to come in. That's why we don't break people's anonymity, because it's too frightening if you're out there to come in here if you think that you're going to tell. Anyway, I didn't know where I was. Oh, anyway, I was at this gym, and so Ron, the guy Ron, I started telling him about my drinking, and I started telling him the truth. You know, the thing about alcohol is it really lies to you. It lies to you so much. I remember I would sit in my house month after month writing a story, the same paragraph sometimes over and over and over again, sitting in the same bathrobe, saying to myself, don't you have a really glamorous life? See, that's what alcohol told me. Alcohol didn't say to me, you know, you're really screwed up. Alcohol said to me, when I took alcohol, it said to me, I am not your enemy. I am your friend. If you take me inside, you don't have to worry about anybody else. I never had to worry when I was sitting in my bedroom or sitting in that office drinking alcohol. You couldn't hurt me. You could not get to me. You couldn't do it with like a funny look or a funny, you know, or if you didn't call me back if you were a guy, or if you looked at me, if you were a girl and I saw you in a party and you didn't say hi to me and I knew you didn't like me and you never did like me before and you never would like me again, and then nobody else liked me, why didn't I just go home? See, none of that could hurt me when I was sitting in that room, but it was all a big lie. I didn't know it. I had no idea that alcohol was not only the disease of denial, it was the disease of loneliness, and it was the biggest lie that I'd ever been told. So anyway, I finally told this guy the truth, and I told him about these nights in my room alone, and I told him about the nights when I'd go out. I said, I remember leaving my house, but I don't ever remember anything about what happened the whole rest of the night. And then I told him about the Academy Awards. This was my biggest secret. I'd gone to the Academy Awards. I had a beautiful dress on. I felt really happy. And then the next thing I remember is being outside the Academy Awards in the bushes, okay, with these two guys. So I finally told this guy about it. And I said, do you think I'm an alcoholic? And he said, maybe. See, that's all he said is maybe. He didn't say, I'm having an intervention. Sit down. You can't drink again. He just said maybe. Thank God. Thank God he just said maybe. Because if you told me I couldn't drink, you were in a dangerous place. I may be little, and I may be an Irish Catholic, and I may have worn white gloves when I went to college, but I'm telling you, you get in the way of my drinking, and you are going to get hit. And you won't fall over, don't worry. I've never knocked anyone out in my life. I'm so little. My fists are very little. At my very first AA meeting, the first thing they said to me was, you have such tiny hands and feet. And I said to this woman, God, that's what my mother used to say to me my whole life. I couldn't believe somebody had said it to me. But anyway, so I started telling this guy the truth, and I finally I called him up, and I'd stopped drinking. I now realize it was my father's birthday, and I called him up, and I said, I don't know what to do. I'm just crazy, and I met with him, and he said, let's go to AA. And I said, oh, no way. I'm not going to AA. You know, what if I meet somebody I know? That was what I said. And at my first meeting, I actually did meet somebody I know. And as soon as I saw her, I jumped in my car, and I sped out the driveway, and I was ready to go home until I realized, wait a minute, she's in an AA meeting too. Okay, I can go back. Anyway, he took me to my first AA meeting. My two friends, Diana and Cindy, Diana, who became my first sponsor, who I love so dearly, told me about the pills, and I started my journey. I started the journey of more insanity than I'd ever felt in all my years of drinking. I felt in my first year of sobriety. And this is one of the ways it manifested itself. I bought a house the week before I got sober. I was living with a guy. I was married. I'd been separated for a couple years. I forgot to get a divorce, you know. And at my very second meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, there was some, like where Rustin is sitting, there were keys on the seat. I threw them on the floor and sat down. And a guy came up and tapped me on the shoulder, and he said, "That's my seat." And I looked up and I thought, "You are so cute." I just remember thinking, you are just darling. Now, we had a lot of things going against us. One, I was 2 days sober. 2, he wasn't sober yet. And 3, he was gay. But it didn't stop me. I was just so enamored of this guy. And I remember I kept saying to myself, you know how crazy you are when we're new. I said to myself, it's okay because he went to Yale. I know this is insane, but that's what I said to myself. He went to Yale, it's got to be okay. So anyway, Alan had a car, not one door worked and only one window. Okay. He took me to a dance. He'd never taken a girl to a dance. I'd never been to a dance sober. We slid in and out of the window of the car. He bought me a corsage. We went to an AA dance, and we did this thing, YMCA. I couldn't believe it. I thought, I've lost my mind. I've gone insane. I'm in AA. I'm not drinking, and all these people around me are crazy. Of course, I wasn't getting the fact that the second step applied to me. But I'd taken the first step by, at some point in my first 6 months of sobriety, admitting to my innermost self that I was an alcoholic. And believe me if you're new, that is not an easy thing to do. And it does not always come at your first meeting. And if you don't take a drink and you stay sober long enough to work the first step, you have a chance to keep your seat. Anyway, I finally did do that. Of course, I was dating Alan. I got a sponsor. I didn't listen to a word she said, not a word. And so when I was 9 months sober, I got another sponsor. She told me that dating this gay man was like sailing a sailboat into a hurricane. I thought, that sounds like a lot of fun, Hey, let's go for it, baby. And I did. I went for it. Okay. But something happened. I wrote my inventory. Alan wrote his. That was the end of our relationship, unfortunately. It was over as soon as we wrote our inventories. I was never going to speak to him again. If by any chance you're in a romance when you're new, don't drink, and don't cut up his ties and shirts, which I did. I'm not proud of it, but I did it. And if you stay sober long enough, I was never going to speak to him again. I was never going to go to the same meetings. I was never going to, never. I mean, it was just over, done. And about a week later, I saw him at a party, and I went, Alan. He went, man, that was it. We were friends, and we've been friends ever since. That's what I had to do. There is no one way to stay sober. You know that. There is no one way to stay sober. There's no one meeting. There's no one person. Every person in this, every person will disappoint you at some point. I'm so glad I found that out when I was new, because I put everybody on a pedestal. And you know what? We're all alcoholics. None of us, I'll tell you, not only should we not be put on a pedestal, but we can't handle it on a pedestal. We need to be marching in lockstep with you. That's the last thing I ever wanted to be when I was sober, one of. God, who wants to be one of? I always have wanted to be the star in my office, the number one person, the most competitive person. I mean, the thought of doing what other people did was just abhorrent to me. Anyway, I was sober, and I was kind of sailing along, and I was doing everything I wanted to do, and I got another sponsor, and I loved her to death, Terry Kirgo. She's dead now. I love this woman. I didn't listen to one thing she said either, though. This is the way I did it. I told Terry after I did whatever I wanted to do. Hi, Terry. I'm moving to New York tomorrow. I just wanted to let you know, okay? All right, bye. Call you from New York. Hi, Terry. Got in this relationship with a guy who is a biker and just gambles for a living. I'm sure, he's a really nice guy. He's sober. Bye. Oh, my God. I was so crazy. I mean, I just, there was one guy. He was about 10 years younger than I was. He was pretty cute, but it was pretty crazy. So anyway, I was getting crazier and crazier and crazier, and gosh, I have to get going. What happened to me is this. When I was 3.5 years sober, I bought a house. I bought it like you'd buy a hat. I said, I love this house. It's peach colored. It has a swimming pool. There's a bridge over it. I'm buying it. I'm not asking a lawyer. I'm not doing anything. I'm just buying it. I put down my $35,000. I moved into my house. I was very happy until I got a call from a lawyer about 6 months later asking me when I was going to be making the $90,000 wraparound loan due 1 year after purchase. At which point, I hope you don't do what I did. Not only did I hang up the phone, I put the phone in a drawer, thinking if it never rings again, I won't have to deal with the fact that I owe somebody $90,000 and I don't have it. So I went to meetings. I didn't talk about it very much because really, if you have a big secret, don't share it. Until they really started to foreclose, and I had to hire a lawyer, and I had to meet with the guy who was foreclosing on my house to see if I could stop it. And my absolutely best solution to my problems in almost 4 years of sobriety was that I started dating the man who was foreclosing on my house. He didn't stop foreclosing. It doesn't work, okay? But anyway, I did. I dated him. So anyway, I was pretty crazy, and if you're new and you're as crazy as I was then, what I'm going to tell you is this. I had no idea how close I was to a drink. I had absolutely no idea how close I was to going out. And this is what happened to me. God intervened. Every person in this room is going to have to do what I had to do, which is surrender. But you don't have to do it how I did it, but you do have to do it. Here's how I did it. I went to a meeting one night. A guy was speaking. An AA tyrant, someone I never spoke to, someone I didn't know anything about, someone I judged from afar. Isn't that what we do? Judge from afar, especially people who are sober a long time, who are tyrants and domineering anyway. He talked. I cried through his whole talk. He said I almost ruined his talk. I shook his hand. He said to me, why don't you come down to the Midnight Mission tomorrow and have a cup of coffee with me? And I thought, well, I'm sorry, I'm going to NBC. That's what I thought. What I said is, okay. And I went down to the Midnight Mission on Skid Row, and I sat with this man in his office, and he talked to me like no one had ever talked to me in AA. He didn't put me down. He wasn't disdainful. In fact, what he said to me in essence was, why is a woman who has a career as successful as yours, who has as good as education as you do, why are you treating AA this way? That was basically what he was saying to me. And then after it, I told him about my boyfriend who was foreclosing on my house. I do think he distinctly, his eyes rolled around in his head when I told him that. And he said, when are you going to see this great guy again? And I said, I'm taking him to Evita tomorrow night to a play. And he said, okay, well, come on, let's take a walk around Skid Row. I want to tell you something. So he wrote out a note. We walked around Skid Row. And he said, what I'm going to ask you to do is as difficult as asking these guys sleeping in these boxes and in these alleys to stop drinking wine. And the note said, tear up the tickets to Evita and cancel out. And this man was asking me to stop being self-destructive, stop running my own life, stop being so willful, stop putting myself in front of the train, and stop putting myself at the doorway to the bar. And I did it, and I have no idea why I did it. I have no idea in the world why at that moment in my sobriety I changed. I called my sponsor. She said, you ought to ask Clancy to be your sponsor. And I thought, this cannot be happening to me. But it did. And within 24 hours, my entire sobriety had changed. I asked Clancy to be my sponsor. I went to the dreaded Pacific group. I wear skirts when I speak. And I'll tell you where all of it has gotten me in the few minutes I have remaining. On July 4th, I celebrated 28 years of sobriety. I got married. I have 2 wonderful kids, something I never thought I wanted in my life. I have 2. My son graduated from law school. My daughter graduated from college this year. Okay, you know, they have the normal problems of kids. But I'm a mom. I've been a mom all these years of sobriety, and I'm a really good daughter. My mother's 91 years old, and I love her so much. And these are the things I don't do anymore. I don't walk around during the meeting. I don't talk during the meeting. I take the phone calls from newcomers. I'm not a flake. I'm not a flake anymore. I was the biggest flake. I'm not an AA dilettante. I was a dilettante. I love Alcoholics Anonymous. I have spoken all over the world in the last couple years. I can't tell you, if you are new and you put this program first, ahead of him or her or it or the house or the job or the career or the kids or whatever it is, it's going to put that on the list above God and that on the list above AA. I promise you that your life will be so not only fulfilling and satisfying, but fun and exciting. And every day you wake up and you say, my God, I have one more day of sobriety. And just as I close, I just want to thank my dear friend Jerry for asking me to speak here, because this is where I took my first cake. And so this meeting means so much to me, because I can stand here tonight and look back to that girl who took her first cake here, and I think about all of us, all my friends who are here a long time sober. I think, how did we do it? How come we're the lucky ones? I guess we're the lucky ones because we're all still sitting in the room. Thank you very much.
I think we got a great talk going on here. Thanks for watching the channel. Taper Dave here. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with, and it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control is connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right, but I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.